good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I am Chamberlain. So,
some days I feel like your younger sister. But that's essentially what I am. Oh, well, good morning. It's so good to have you join us this beautiful Tuesday morning. It rained throughout last night and the evening, so Abuja is kind of cool this morning. Welcome, Amaupe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm glad I got the memo this morning for this attire, and yes, you'll probably... So if you are the younger sister, what does that make me? Am I Makinde? Good morning and welcome. It is October 17. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, and so I don't know what's going on in other parts of the country, but I do know that in some parts of Abuja, we still see some queues for petrol stations. I know NNPC will always say, we've got enough stock out there, so don't bother yourself about some of those things. But how we should take those statements...
Is it stock or price now?
Both.
Because some people say maybe they're not queuing because of stock, maybe they're queuing because of the price.
Well, you know, even when... You remember at that time, too, when the price went up, it was available. At least everyone who was driving, you could buy it and you come off. And where the prices are a lot cheaper, you didn't have... Yes, you have a little bit of those queues, but when you now have to consistently do that time and again, it becomes a challenge. I know that, look, because now the thing about this is that there are some stations that usually have it. They've not been selling for the past week. So if it's a price, what's going on with those chaps?
It is a quiet protest, though, from what I gather, that the marketers are protesting against an unlevel playing field. That, you know, government, the NNPC has access, direct access to the seas, and they have, like, you know, special depots, which makes them more efficient, makes it more efficient for them to be able to do business. The add-ons that the small marketers have to have, you know, unloading, not just unloading from motherships to little vessels, and then the storage areas, where their storage facilities are, and all of that. I think along the way, from when the ship docks at the port to when it eventually gets to their filling stations, there are inefficiencies that, you know, makes it, those inefficiencies that have always been there, that makes it a little more difficult for them to, you know, sell at the price at which the NNPC is currently selling at, and as a result of that, they can't compete. They think that somehow they have been disadvantaged, and the NNPC, understanding that this is the sector in which they have been playing all of these years, you continue to say that there is no subsidy in the sector. So people have been wondering, if you say that subsidy hasn't been reintroduced, then what magic are you playing? So but players have said, look, this is most likely what is happening, that because the NNPC has access to you know, more efficient systems and more efficient ways of doing things. Now, this remains to be seen, and I think the NNPC can come and say it, you know, whether or not subsidy has been reintroduced. We need to hear in very clear terms whether those who say, look, with the price of international, price of crude and refining, we cannot be selling petrol at this rate. But NNPC says, no, we are fine, and we're still even making some money on top of it. So,
you know, this was part of the issues that we thought that they were going to address, or it wouldn't be an issue before they went public. And you know, because yes, they say that we're the sole importers of petrol. And then at that time, you were the regulator, and they were not so strong in the market. So, but now that they are competitors, so now they say, look, you're supposed to be, so what are you now? So who's the regulator, who's the competitor? You still have a lot of advantages playing that, because I know some stations that used to sell at, you know, when it started at 6.13, and then they, after a while, 6.15, and I saw 6.20. So when those stations saw the queues thin out, they brought it back down to 6.17. And now some of them, I don't see, those are the people I'm talking about who, I say, for some days now, they've been short. They've not been accessing this. And you remember, some time ago, they did tell us in the dailies, they were trying to access Forex to bring in this product. So, who knows?
And that's why, you know, when people say, oh, look, it's because when this Forex restrictions that have now been lifted, or it's so that everybody has equal access. Right now, there are those who are just trying to bring in energy products, petrol products, and cannot get the dollars, the Forex that they need, you know, at the CBN, they're sourcing their forex at the parallel market. So if those people who are supposed to be considered priority, actually they're bringing in petrol, something as vital as petrol, is it those who want to bring in toothpicks that will get the dollars? You know, very big questions to ask. But also, I think also to say that, you know, people have also argued that the way our sector, our energy sector operated was not the way, it's not the way that, you know, energy sectors should operate. That downstream activities are usually also capital intensive, and that for many years we have over-subsidized the sector in such a way that almost everybody has gotten in, and inefficiencies have now been introduced. So it's high time they say that's why you see all the big players. Because have you ever wondered why Shell isn't playing in the downstream sector here? Can I shock you? In Liberia, do you know that Shell, it sells petrol? Oh, yes. Liberia has a refinery, and, you know, they don't produce any crude oil, and Shell is playing in their downstream sector. So why is it that the big multinationals are not playing in the downstream sector? We have a few. A number of them are not as efficient as they used to be in those days. Why is it that they've been reluctant to play in our downstream sector here? Why are all of these small independent marketers, why can't they band together, make something stronger that could make them more efficient and perhaps compete more efficiently against the not against now, because hey, the market should be big enough for all with the NNPC.
Well, I don't know what's going on in Lagos, though, if there's any such concern. Are there any?
Well, to be honest, I haven't noticed any such serious concerns about queues in my part of the city. I don't know if it's happening in anywhere else, but to the best of my knowledge, there isn't any such, and I think I take time sometimes to drive around. Of course, yeah, there are some fuel stations that don't open all the time. There were a number of fuel stations, particular ones that I usually get from. Occasionally, they don't have stock, but there are some that do have stock. But I don't think that has amounted to queues as yet, to the best of my knowledge. If you watching us now have such experiences of queues in Lagos or around Lagos, please share with us on our Twitter handle and our email that is right there in front of you. But, you know, for me, guys, you know, two issues that you have raised. Chamberlain, you raised the issue of the fuel supply in Abuja, and if it is that serious in Abuja, I wonder how it is in Maiduguri, in Sokoto, and a number of other parts of the country like that. Then, Marco, you raised the issue of forex. You know, I'm looking forward to that day when petroleum products, importation of petroleum products, will be under the prohibition list of CBN. For me, you know, that issue of, you know, whatever it was that CBN came up with, the most important thing is communicate with the people. You know, we had this conversation yesterday, and we were asking Mr. Alaje questions around whether or not that forex restriction that's been lifted is going to be beneficial in the long run to the country. He also told us in no ambiguous terms yesterday that we are not positioned as a producing country. So if we can't even produce the things that we have capacity to produce, we've had refineries in this country since, what, the 70s? And here we are grappling with petroleum products. And Markwa, thank you for bringing to our mind the fact that so seemingly smaller countries in Africa are doing things that the giant of Africa is struggling to do, and that should be a concern to every one of us. So here we are. And I'm hoping that one day we'll be able to look back in the rear view, put all of these issues in the rear view mirror. Because where are we dealing with them? Is it that we don't have the brains? Of course we have everything. So the most important thing in all of this for me, guys, is communication. Let the CBN communicate with the people from time to time. This has been the benefit of this policy that we came up with, and we will keep Nigerians informed. Where we're having challenges in this area, and then just talk to the people. That's all. Is that too much to ask? Yes. I mean, you know, on the front pages of the dailies this morning, Chamberlain, Ipman is already tackling the NNPCL about whether or not we have enough fuel in the country. We just wait to see. Because at the end of the day, what is important is that you communicate with the people. Give us the truth. Because whether you like it or not, if you give people blank checks, believe me, it'll bounce. And the consequences, I don't think anybody wants to go there.
Last time I checked, I think it's a crime to give someone a dot check. So Okay, blank, not dot. Okay, all right. I hear you. Well, look at New Telegraph this morning, part of what you highlighted here. But first, the lead story. FG to present 26.01 trillion naira 2024 appropriation bill to NAS. As FEC approves MTEF, benchmarks crude price at $73.96, pegs dollar at 700 naira, projects 1.7 million barrels per day, justifies fresh $1.5 billion World Bank loan to raise funds for completion of 18,897 kilometer roads with concrete. Changes meeting day Mondays. You ever wonder, why did they even... You wonder what was up with the FEC when they had to do meetings on Wednesdays. But now, hey, if you take that private sector mindset into governance, I think it might help. Mondays, you have over the weekend, go prepare your documents, whatever it is that you have. Go there on Monday and do the job. So, there you go.
What about FEC meetings on Mondays?
That's what is happening now, so no longer Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Or which other days they thought. But now, change is the only constant thing in life, after all.
Yeah,
so,
I guess it's an experiment. It might be a worthy experiment. Let's see how it goes. I mean, there was a reason why
it used to be
on Wednesday and why administrations
they stuck to it.
have stuck to it. So let us see. This is a new experiment. If it works for them, great. If it doesn't, I'm sure Wednesday is still open. There's nothing. There's nothing written in stone that it must be on Monday or it must be on Wednesday.
Yeah.
They can pick Tuesday or Thursday, as the case might be.
Yes.
Whatever works for them.
We'll try and get somebody who at least, should have an idea or two on the program today to just shed light on that for us as we progress. So stay with us on that one. Just above this lead story, before I go to the one at the bottom strip, Minister laments inability of 11 states to set up Statistics Bureau. So you might want to go ahead and check this. So what is the big deal? Why don't they want to do this? I thought that's the basics of planning, the indices upon development. All these palliatives are talking about distribution. Okay, well, we'll circle this and we'll circle back to this one in the course of the programming as well. So here's what you highlighted at the bottom strip, guys. Fuel scarcity. NNPCL stock insufficient, Ipman alleges. Says bad roads, high diesel cost also liable. Oil prices fall over anticipated US-Venezuela sanctions deal. And then seized $9.8 million. Ex-NNPC GMD Andrew Yakubu knows fate November 1. Remember when some persons say they got to a place in the bush, in the remote area, saw some property and thought, what's going on here? And then it was air-conditioned. Externally, it looked unattractive, but internally, it was air-conditioned. And guess what? They had hard currencies in there, chilling.
In the bush?
In the bush, air-conditioned, nice,
and they
chilling.
didn't take pictures of it?
Well, if you go to pages 2, 3, and 8, you know what I'm talking. You will understand. They'll shed a lot more light. And by the way, there were some too. There was in, guess what? Septic tanks.
Yeah, we saw those ones.
What do people?
We saw those ones.
You never could imagine people think like this.
We also saw the ones in big safes.
Who would have thought?
We saw the ones in safe houses.
If they mentioned that to you, that was going to happen, you think, oh, come on, stop that joke. But it was real.
I think that we have heard, Chamberlain and seen, is very troubling. What I find even more troubling is that people don't value lives and they do everything and anything just for this wealth, quick wealth. It's really mind-boggling. No premium placed on life. Anything can be done. Entire communities can be destabilized. Entire states can be destabilized, all for profit. It is, you really have to wonder where our humanity is when it's the kind of thing I cannot comprehend. But hey, this is the world that we found ourselves. Let's deal with it. Let's deal with it. Daily Trust is the paper I have for you, and look at it. They have this. I'm talking about food now. Food access drops as inflation hits 18-year high. There's a lead story right there. Nigerians lament hunger, poverty. Farmers blame corruption, poor policy implementation. Prices drop in Taraba, but no money to buy. We're intensifying all-year food production, and that's according to the federal government. Now, there's a context for this. Yesterday was International World Food Day, and there are a number of contexts in, a lot of places where events, were happening to take an assessment of, people's access to food. How are we doing? One of the SDGs, development goals, UN development goals, is to end hunger by 2030. But yesterday, many of the events that were held, at least here in Abuja, I don't know if anything happened in your state, it turns out that many more communities are in danger of hunger. And one of the things that we're also finding out is that children are the ones bearing the risk of this hunger. I was at an event put together by the International Federation of the Red Cross yesterday, and they said they've had an alarm out now for a while that 25 million children are in acute risk of hunger, of a hunger crisis. So there's 25 million children. We're talking hunger.
Food, that's the size of some countries.
Is the first thing that we should be able to look after. We should be able to look after for our population. State government, whatever government you are, local government, state government, federal government, one of the things we should ensure is that our children do not grow or go hungry. So they have been raising an alarm that 25 million children are at risk of hunger in the northeast, or more specific, northeast and northwest of the country. And they've had to do several interventions, but right now they too are struggling. So they're asking for help from well-meaning Nigerians, to see what it is that they too can do to support, because it's all our call. Sometimes when we set these SDGs, we think it's the goals meant for United Nations, or we think it's the goals meant for government. It's the goals meant for everybody. Who doesn't want to see a world that doesn't have people who are not hungry? You want to hear that your brother in another state is hungry, meanwhile you have more than enough to eat in your own state. It's only a matter of time before you are affected in your state. Yeah. So I really hope that we pay attention to stories like this. Food access drops as inflation hits 18-year high.
That's where we, the media, will need to do a lot more, because the president declared a state of emergency on food security.
Indeed, he did.
So we need to then go back and ask, look, what are the parameters? What's the results? What are the templates? What was the target? So all of those questions, we need to help. Go out there, question people who should be questioned. Focus on, spotlight several things, because if not, that's just one region alone. 25 million. 25
million children. Children, more specifically, Chimling, is really heart-rending. And they had pictures. So you can imagine the sort of pictures I had to see yesterday of people in my country. Waiting. Yes, who cannot have access to a meal a day. It is really very troubling. You have a number of other stories here at the bottom. Experts react as federal government proposes 26 trillion naira for 2024 budget. That is also their benchmark crude price at $73.96 per barrel. Dollar is at 700 naira. Well, these are their parameters. No, dollar is not at 700, especially on the parallel market. No, these are parameters for the budget that they're proposing. Okay, page 19 is where you find details. You also find details. Look at this cattle market. Northern traders cry out over Abia eviction threats. That is also right there. Israel and Hamas war. Saudi Arabia summons Nigeria. Other OIC countries to emergency meeting. A summon, that's a very, very strong word to use, because, sovereign nations are equal, are one and equal. You can ask your sovereign nations and other sovereign nations to a meeting, but to summon them, it implies that Saudi Arabia is some big brother or some elder brother, and then they're summoning Nigeria. Come on.
How would they be summoned? What is that even about? Summon Nigeria?
Israel-Hamas war. So this is about oil-producing countries, OIC countries. Is this oil?
They've got no business summoning Nigeria.
Well, page 26. Let me just be clear that OIC is not Islamic, but oil. Let me just be sure. But hey, page 26 is where you find details right there. Someone is a rather, I don't know, not the kind of word you use, unless, of course, in this arrangement, maybe they are the ones leading that particular body, and as such, they're summoning all of their members to a meeting. That might work in that context. And those members sovereign
nations.
Yeah, but in that context, it might be used, but you can't just summon. I mean, in international relations, all countries, no matter how small, their sovereign rights are recognized. So you cannot just summon a sovereign nation to a meeting, unless, of course, it's within the context of a meeting or of an association, of a body, which you need, perhaps. But we'll leave it there for Daily Trust.
Maybe it's also journalistic language at play there, Mokwe, because, sometimes I've had to raise those issues. Come on. There are certain words we use to get headlines, just to get all the clickbait and eyeballs we can. But hey, I don't know, Mokwe, if this will make your day better or a little less what you have, because the Guardian newspaper this morning isn't too far from what you have on the front page of Daily Trust. Look at the front page of the Guardian newspaper, and it is also making some comparison about what we have. At 1,000 naira to the dollar, 30% inflation, over 90% Nigerians denied healthy diet. The graphics on the front page gives you percentage by percentage of what? 90% of Nigerians cannot afford a healthy diet. Nigeria's 30.64% Nigeria's food inflation, 26.72% September headline inflation, on and on and on and on like that. In the meantime, the graphics, one of the graphics, the one that has quite a number of things, cost of diet, dollar per person daily. You have for Ghana, for Nigeria, for Cameroon, South Africa, and a number of other countries right there on the front page. And of course, as you can see, Nigeria takes the cake, followed by Kenya with 81.1%. The diet affordability metrics is also there, so with some facts. Find the details of that on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Certainly very, very, very concerning. Very, very concerning indeed. Several other stories on the front page. FG pegs FX rate at 700 naira to the dollar as overhead costs spike. 26 trillion naira 2024 budget. Find the details of find all of that detail on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Several other stories you'll find there, but states issue 1.13 trillion naira bond in 44 years. That's on business page at page 15. That's the Guardian newspaper this morning.
Okay, apologies for that. I mean, you saw the wrong one on screen. He was reading the right one, but that one was not what you see. So it should have been at 1,000, but hopefully we'll sort that out. Daily Independent is the next one we've got for you here. CBN lifting forex ban on agri items, put investment in sector at risk. The big lead right here. FEC approves 2024 budgetary expenditure of 26.01 trillion naira. That's what you see right there. And the image you see there is that of the Minister of Youth, Dr. Jamila Ibrahim, being sworn in yesterday. So look at the riders. Pegs oil benchmark at $73.96, exchange rate at 700 naira to the dollar. OK's AFDB, $80 million for the young in knowledge economy. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? Okay. And then raises Presidential Council on Industrial Revitalization Roadmap. Industrial Revitalization Roadmap. So I think this might speak to part of what we highlighted yesterday, how we need to ensure that industries, that's where there should be a state of emergency, actually. So it's something we'll keep our focus on and see, ask questions, what's going on with that, what's their timeline, are they delivering, why are they not delivering, who are the members. You have to speak and answer questions all the time, remember. You just have to, because time is of essence. That's Daily Independence this morning.
Okay, well, let's see if we can get up the Guardian for... Pardon, where did you do that? I mean the Vanguard. I'm very tempted to also take Business Day, but pick one mouth. A little small for choice. That's what happens when you have options. But take a look at this. PDP, Labour Party, PDP is People's Democratic Party, Labour Party, fire federal government as cost of food items drive inflation to 26.7%. So tells you that access to food is now a major problem for many Nigerians. Presidency, APC, keep mum. MBS reports on soaring food prices, verdict on Tinubu's rule. That's according to Labour Party. I'm looking at the Vanguard newspapers for you this morning, just in case they missed that. I'm hoping that it will pop up soon so you can see it. The lead story, as I said, PDP, Labour Party, fire federal government as cost of food items drive inflation to 26.7%. You also have right there, Nigerians now spend income on food, yet not enough. That's according to Obi. Tinubu, APC, unprepared for governance. According to PDP, no respite for consumer prices. That's according to analysts. Really, it's a really tough time that many Nigerians are going through. And even when the food prices drop, people will still ask, will people have the money to be able to buy this food? That is a big question. But, one of the solutions could be that maybe we all need to own a little patch of land where we grow something, however small. If you don't have any land, if you live in a high-rise, own pots. Grow what it is that you can.
How did you know what I was thinking this morning? My essay on farm matters is listening to you right now.
I don't think you mean Ayo, right?
No. I can't pay him.
Own pots. But hey, it is not journalists that should be driving it. It is the government. There was a time where we lived in this country and we heard of Operation Feed the Nation. My dad told me about how coppers, youth corps members, were deployed in that particular exercise. Farmlands for many miles, and youth corps members had to ensure that those farms were functioning in order to feed Nigeria. So maybe we should go back there. Maybe we should. Anyways, that is if government knows what it is doing. Well, take a look at these other stories you see there. PDP crisis, Wike queries acting BOT chairman Wabara. The story is right there on the front page. And look at that, plight of pensioners. It's a really disturbing sight. I think pensioners for verification, at a particular place, and they're being brought, some, being held by the hand, others on hospital beds. This is very troubling. There needs to be a better way to be able to verify if pensioners are still alive, so that you can pay them their pension. You can pay them what's due. A more dignifying way. Yes, we agree that the PTAD, Pension Transitional Arrangement Directorate, they're doing some work. But I'm sure that no matter the work that they're doing, there's always room for improvement. So these pictures are truly troubling. You have a number of other stories right there, which I might leave you to do yourself, because time is fast spent now. Let's leave it there for Vanguard newspapers.
Well, it seems everyone is interested in agriculture this morning. Daily Independent has this on its front page. CBN lifting FX ban on agri items puts investments in sector at risk. What does that mean? The details continue on the inside pages of the paper today. And right under that picture on the front page of the president congratulating the new Minister of Youth, FEC approves 2024 budgetary expenditure of 26.01 trillion naira. Pegs oil benchmark at $73.96, exchange rate $700. OK's AFDB $80 million for the youth for the Young in Knowledge Economy raises Presidential Council on Industrial Revitalization Roadmap. The details of that continues on the inside pages of the paper this morning. And a number of other stories right under the picture at the bottom of the page. Stop undermining democracy with your utterances, PDP tells Ganduje. The details are on the inside pages. Naira redesign. CBN collected 3.2 trillion naira, printed only 402 billion naira. That's according to Femi Falana. The story is on page 6. Of course, you get more details of that if you go to our YouTube page at youtube.com/Channels Television, Channels TV, to find that interview we had with Mr. Falana yesterday. Several other stories on the front page of the Daily Independent, but that's the paper this morning, and a look at some of the dailies. We're back right after now to begin the issues lined up. Do stay with us.
The only issue that has been raised, which for me has to be considered by the government, is that we have in this country the Federal Character Commission Act, and also by virtue of Section 14 of the Constitution, appointments must reflect federal character. So if you are going to have, you have the EFCC and the ICPC, the heads cannot come from the same zone. So if there are two positions in this country, in the public service, one must go to the north, one must come to the south. If there are 4, 2 must go to the north, 2 must come to the south. If there are 6, 1 must go to each geopolitical zone. That is the law in Nigeria today. So I am not comfortable with the fact as of today, the heads of the EFCC and the ICPC are from the same zone. Apart from that, Mr. Olukoyede is eminently qualified to head the EFCC. My colleagues who have criticized the appointment have not looked at the laws, the relevant law, the relevant provision of the EFCC, which is Section 2, which provides that the chairman, right, must be at least an assistant commissioner of police or its equivalent in the security service or in a law enforcement agency. When Mr. Abdurrashid Bawa was appointed, there were people saying, no, this position is for police officers. And I said, no. If you had served in a law enforcement agency, you are qualified and you have acquired enough experience. You are qualified to head the EFCC.
Okay, welcome back. So that is part of what we're going to be talking discussing this morning. We've got 2 gentlemen joining us to weigh in on the matter. Mr. Mondo Bani is a former chairman, section of Public Interest and Development Law, NBA, SPDL, as well as we also have Daniel Bola, a legal practitioner. He's also Still used to be spokesperson. That was in 2019 for Atiku Okowa campaign cancelled. Gentlemen, good morning and thank you for coming on here today.
And it's interesting that they both have blue ties on. Did you notice that?
No. I thought it was going to be a red letter today, but it's blue.
Yes. Just noticed.
All right. So let's start off with this. It seems to be unending. The perspective of Mr. Falana, who thinks that, look, his colleagues who haven't, who think otherwise about the qualification of Mr. Olukoyede, who's been appointed, should read provisions of the law. He mentioned Section 2 of that act as well. So, Mr. Boala, let me start with you. Perhaps you are of the opinion that that is not the case.
Yes.
Why?
Thank you for having me. One beautiful thing about law is about opinion, right? I hold the view that Olukoyede's nomination and appointment runs foul of Section 2. Section 2 is very clear. If you look at Section 2, for the avoidance of doubt, the commission shall consist of the following members. A chairman who shall, A, be the chief executive and accounting officer of the commission, be a serving or retired member of any government security or law enforcement agency, not below the rank of assistant commissioner of police or its equivalent, right? And then you talk about 15 years post, 15 years cognate experience. Now, shall be a serving or retired member. It's already conclusive that the category of individual that can head that commission must come from one who is covered by the civil service rules, who is also pensionable. That's why it's either serving or retired. Now, recently, Olukoyede was sacked. If he was serving, like someone who came through the recruitment process, you couldn't just sack him just like that. But that is just one. Now, in Wike versus Federal Republic of Nigeria, the court said, where the wordings of a statute are very clear and unambiguous, give it their ordinary meaning, that any attempt to bring extraneous interpretation will amount to what? They say it will amount to illegal legislation or amendment through the back door. Now, appointing him will amount to amendment through the back door, and this is the point. It says there is a baseline. The baseline is that the person must come from security or law enforcement agency of the government. The reference is government, not private sector. Number two, security or law enforcement. The security is one that is covered by the National Securities Agencies Act, which comprise of DIA, NIA, and SSS. They come from that intelligence platform. Law enforcement comprise of both EFCC, the police, NSCDC, and the rest. Now, in EFCC, right now as we speak, the cadets that came through the ranks, and they call them Course 1. But in the next few months, they will be hitting the 20th year as operatives, trained, and their recruitment process is pensionable. They wrote tests, they were recruited, you go for training, 6 months or 1 year. After the training, they will now commission you and give you an identity card, otherwise called the warrant card. If you flip the backside of the warrant card, it says, the holder of this card has all the immunity and the privileges of a superior police officer. That's why they have arms, they can effect arrest. And they garner this experience in the EFCC in either investigation, operations, intelligence, and all of that. So when you see 15 years cognate experience, that word cognate there has been misinterpreted, in my view, by a lot of people to assume that it opens up an expanded interpretation to include somebody who comes from the private sector. No, the reason why the word cognate is there is because there is already a baseline established, which is security or law enforcement. So if the person is coming from the police, he has to show 15 years cognate experience from the police in the ordinary course of training of the police.
Even if he's in the police for 15 years or 20 years, it won't suffice. It won't qualify as cognate here.
If he has been in the police for 15 years...
Not a serving police officer.
No, if the person is not a serving police officer, somebody who has not been commissioned and made a superior police officer that will have power to hold rank, he is not eligible. Because you see, most of these organizations, they have what they call operatives and support staff. In EFCC, now Olukoyede, when he was appointed as chief of staff and secretary of the commission, if you look at the backside of his ID card, you will see he found returned to the nearest police station on the commission. He didn't have power to hold gun. He never investigated a single case because he did not come as an operative.
Okay. Mr. Bani, do you agree?
I want to start by saying that if you follow this EFCC thing from beginning, there is always controversy in every appointment. And so also is their exit, starting from the first person, Nuhu Ribadu, the last man, that is Bawa. The appointment always generate controversies and a lot of discussions on television, and at the end, the dust will settle down. I'm very happy that he has quoted a particular section, and that is that section 2 of the EFCC Act. We look at what are the requirements for you to be a chairman of EFCC. You must be a serving or retired member of the security agency or law enforcement agency. Security or law enforcement agency. And everyone agrees that this man that has just been appointed was once a worker within a security enforcement agency, and that is EFCC.
You use worker advisedly?
Yeah, yes, officer. He was an officer, chief of staff, or at the time he became the secretary of that particular agency. Then secondly, he must be of a status of not less than, not below the rank of assistant commissioner of police. Then the third qualification is that he must have or possess cognate experience of 15 years. Now that issue of cognate experience is where we're having issue, and the definition is, does that cognate experience mean that he must have it within any of the security or law enforcement agency? The act itself was not specific. If you look at the act, it didn't say that that cognate experience must be garnered from the security or law enforcement agency. Look at it. It didn't say so.
So what happened to base interpretation?
No, wait now. So cognate experience, what is the meaning? It is professional experience. And those who are pushing this particular young man as a chairperson gave you reason why they are pushing him. They say, one, he is a lawyer for 22 years. And if you check his profile, that this is a man who has been a compliance regulatory consultant with specialization in fraud management and corporate intelligence. And that he was once a member of the fraud advisory panel in UK. And that he has been to Harvard University in terms of training concerning fraud. And a lawyer for 22 years, and having worked either 5 or 6 years in a security and law enforcement agency, has garnered that cognate experience you are talking about. Since the act itself was not specific as to where that cognate, if you look at it, it didn't say cognate experience within, because that's how, where that particular problem is coming. People were saying, oh, it is within the, law enforcement. It didn't say so. The act itself was specific, was not specific. It said so, 15 years cognate experience. It didn't mention that it must be, that you must continually be in a security agency before you get that. So they now say the man is qualified. Okay, just a minute. Let me just finish now. He's qualified by virtue of the fact that he has been an officer of law enforcement agency, that he has practiced law in an area that is related to enforcement of law, that's fraud, for more than 15 years now. And that if you put all that together, that qualifies for the cognate experience, because that is the only place they are looking at, this place disqualifies him. But the act itself was not specific as to where the cognate experience should be. When you are looking at interpretation, as my brother has rightly pointed out, there are 3 methods, there are 3 schools. There is a school of, if the law is very clear and unambiguous, give it its literary meaning. Don't ever come with any importation of any other method. Then secondly, if giving a literary interpretation to a legislation will create some level of absurdity, then you apply golden rule. That is the second school of thought. You apply golden rule to avoid absurdity. Then the third one is mischief rule.
What's this golden rule, sir?
Golden rule is that you are looking at a piece of legislation now, and you look at it that if you apply literary rule interpretation, it will create some level of absurdity. Then you now look towards a particular interpretation that would now avoid that absurdity.
Which rule are you applying?
Then the third one is what you call mischief rule. You ask yourself, what was the intention, what was the law before the legislators came in? Then what was the mischief that the new act now wanted to cure? That is the mischief rule. We are running away from the Nigerian police as being incapable of handling corruption. You created an agency by way of avoiding Nigerian police. And then you now, according to you, says that that particular agency must be run by the same people that you are running away from. Because now really...
That's a different matter.
Yeah, I'm telling I'm saying...
So which rule did you apply in this?
Now, the rule that you will look at for those who are advocating that this man should be, will be this issue of mischief rule and even literary rule. Let me finish.
For this section too,
literary
right?
rule, yes. Now, because the cognate experience was not specific as to where you are gathering from. Look at it. Look at the law. Let them bring it on the television. It didn't say cognate experience within any. It said cognate, 15 years cognate experience. Look at it. Look at the law. Let them show it on television, whether there was any particular reference to any law enforcement agent. So my brother has rightly pointed out that if a law is very clear, unambiguous, don't import any other thing other than that literary interpretation. He agrees with me.
So this is the point. The reason, you see, look at it, and I will give you in contradistinction, Section 3, Sub 3 of the ICPC Act, to tell you that this act is very clear and unambiguous. Now, the number one is that the person must come. He must either be a serving or a retired member of any of the government, security, or law enforcement. Baseline. Number two, he must not be below the rank of Assistant Commissioner of Police or its equivalent. The reason for the use of the word its equivalent in this context is because police is mentioned. So if you are bringing somebody from DSS, he must not be less than the rank that is equivalent to the Assistant Commissioner of Police, which in this case will be Assistant Director. If you are bringing from DIA, if you are bringing from NIA, then he must possess cognate. Cognate means relevant. 15 years relevant experience in law enforcement or security.
It's not there.
Because it has, I'm coming now, it has already been established he must come from the agency, security or law enforcement. He must not be below the rank of Assistant Commissioner of Police. He must have cognate experience, relevant experience to that field. If you are bringing somebody from DSS, he must have 15 years. And let me even tell you, they mentioned the resume of Olukayode. It says cognate experience. It didn't say cognate certificate. Olukayode's profile that is being bandied and shared are profiles that are imported from the corporate profile of the chambers that he worked with, which is that chamber is an expert in fraud management and the rest. Now, there is a distinction between you go and obtain a training, that is, you go for a course, 5 days, 1 week, or whatever, and get certification, and experience that is acquired dealing with live cases. Olukayode, even with the little stint he has had in EFCC, has never investigated, has never presided over. You would have asked them, Mr. Chamberlain, when they said he's a fraud expert, he's this and that, ask it, the expertise, was it obtained from a live case or a seminar? If you look at FBI, you look at NCA and all of them, all the individuals that are heading or have ever headed those agencies were individuals that came in through the rank. Olukayode was not pensionable as at the time he left. Let me even tell you a deeper picture. The president ought not to have even appointed him in any federal government work. Do you know why? There was a Justice Salami panel, that sat and determined an indictment against him and Magu and the rest. And that committee sat like a tribunal. They took evidence. Olukayode and Magu and the rest were represented by Wahab Shittu, senior advocate. There was a hearing. It took weeks. Then there was a verdict by that, which now indicted him.
But Magu was promoted.
No, that verdict of the report, I'm saying that indicted them. It is police. He was indicted and removed from EFCC, right? Now, after it was gazetted, if you ever want to jettison that, you have to challenge that and quash it in the court of law. Tribunal of inquiry. So, and then the second interpretation that I say to just oppose that is that, you see, if you look at Section 3, Sub 3 of the ICPC Act, you will know that it is deliberate that EFCC Act is couched that way, because in ICPC Act 3 and 3, it says the commission shall consist of a chairman and 12 other members, 2 of whom shall come from each of the geopolitical zones. Now, look at the composition. A retired police officer not below the rank of Commissioner of Police, a legal practitioner with 10 years post-call, a retired judge of Superior Court, a retired public servant not below the rank of a director, a woman, a young man or woman not less than 21 years or 30, a chartered accountant. Then if you look at 4, in the case of the chairman, he said the chairman shall be a person who has held or is qualified to hold office as a judge of a superior court of record in Nigeria.
But here it was specific.
Correct. So what I'm saying is, with this provision now, Olukayode can fit into it here because, one, he's a lawyer who has put in years of experience beyond that, and it says a judge or a lawyer. Now, the EFCC Act The reason why you don't see a lawyer indicated there is because it relates to members of the government, security, or intelligence. And they could be lawyers. Ribadu was a lawyer. Farida was a lawyer. But they were not recruited because they were lawyers and they had experience as lawyers. They were recruited because of their experience in law enforcement. And thirdly, when they said it was a departure from the police, I agree. But that was the reason why EFCC was created. Bawa was not a police officer. He was a cadet trained. FBI, if you go to FBI, you see this SSS before now was being led by military because military created it. At some point, the DSS came to the rank, produced their own training, and then produced their own leaders. So if you look at this act, you will agree with me, with the greatest respect, that Olu Kayode does not fit in. They are approbating and reprobating. Why don't you just drop about his stint in AFCC and say his 21 years post-call is sufficient? They still want to import that. And then they will import. Now, if you want to import his stint in AFCC, why don't you then abide by the mandatory provision that says it has to be 15 years?
There was no mandatory provision, my brother. There is no mandatory provision with the cognate experience. Look at it. It stands alone. It said 15 years cognate experience. He never mentioned in any law enforcement agency or security. Look at it. The law is very clear. Bawa himself, you mentioned rightly. You know, people also raise issue that he is not a police officer as properly defined under that act. And people now say, look, he has had a training under EFCC, school and all that. For that alone, that qualifies him.
Well, so I was not trained by EFCC.
Yes, well, I'm coming now, but I'm saying, people are also saying with regards to Lu, that look, he has had a stint in that particular agency, that law enforcement agent, for not up to 15 years now. Wait, now, I'm saying that cognate experience cannot be tied to law enforcement. Look at the law. Now, you came. It's clear. He didn't mention that it must be law enforcement agency. So, we raise all these issues in order to educate the people. Now, know it that this particular appointment is subject to confirmation by the Senate. The Senate will look at the provisions of the Act, look at whatever he has had as cognate experience in order to give him a clearance. So the appointment alone does not in any way make him now the substantive chairman of EFCC. We must get that clear. What we're doing now is to look at the law. And if there is any ambiguity, I've already said it somewhere else, can we clear those ambiguity by amending the law and make it as express as he has pointed out with ICPC law that says this is what it's supposed to be? Because there is ambiguity here with the issue of cognate experience, him tying it to EFCC, to law enforcement agency, whereas the act itself, whereas the law didn't say so. You want to ask a question, my sis?
Indeed. So I'm looking at the fact that it looks like somebody now, excuse me, a lawyer like yourselves has now gone to court.
Yes.
Mr. Opatola Victor, that's his name, and he's suing the federal government, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the National Assembly of Nigeria, Attorney General of the Federation, and even Mr. Ola Olukoide. They're all defendants in this particular
case. Yes.
Yeah. So we'll see how that
plays out. Because the court will give interpretation now.
Yeah, but you said that you've also pointed out the fact that almost every single appointment into the chairmanship role of the EFCC,
even the exit,
has, exit is it's a totally different kettle of fish, but the entrance has always been problematic. Is it a problem that can be avoided?
Yes. And that is where I say, if there is sometimes some absurdity or ambiguity in any law, what the legislators should do is to say, what is the problem with this law? Can we make it a bit simpler and clearer? Because this cognate experience is the issue. If you talk about agency, the man has been in an agency that is law enforcement agency. If you talk about cognate experience, the man has had it. But can we, agree that that cognate experience mustn't be within the security, make it express.
So it can be non-operational.
Yes. Are you following me? Because I see no reason why you are running away from Nigerian police to really handle the issue of corruption. And you are now saying that he must always be a Nigerian police officer to man an agency while you're running away from it. So it's contradictory. It doesn't make sense to me. So people will now say, what was the reason for even bringing that agency? Was it now to still hand it over to Nigerian police? So that's why these people now have said, wait a minute, let's look at this law once again. Because over time, it has been police, manning, whether as a lawyer and all that, but police officer. And we have not had the best in terms of satisfaction. Can we look at that law and look whether there is a way we can get somebody outside the Nigerian police? And they saw a loophole. They saw a loophole. Let me finish. They saw a loophole in the issue of cognate experience. That it mustn't be within the law enforcement agency. And they already, the person who has gone to court, I'm very happy that somebody's in the court of law in order to probably to get a perfect explanation and interpretation by the court. Because the law is most times another school of thought is what the court says it is. For now, what we're doing is only debating. When the court now makes a specific pronouncement, it now becomes a proper interpretation of that particular section.
We'll take a break at this point. When we come back, we'll see if we can get a consensus on whether they agree that this appointment doesn't satisfy federal character. In just a moment, please stay with us.
Passionate about two things in Nigeria. The first is football. The second is our rice. And nobody celebrates like a Nigerian. So, for every goal scored, every mark made, you can be sure to always come back home to rice. Celebrate with Nigerian Premium Big Bull Rice. Homegrown just like you. Big Bull Rice. Tasty rice. Nourished you.
Papa! Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Sit down.
How you doing now?
They can't pay.
I bring your medicine.
Thank you.
Papa, where Miko?
Miko don't go work. Miko don't join oil business.
Oil business?
Yes, sir.
Which company? Papa, Miko don't they follow them go cook oil? That's illegal.
Oh, small oil.
It's a crime. That kind of business no good for Miko at all. It is illegal and very dangerous.
What happened?
Na fire! Wow. Papa, na fire for there with the cook oil. Who does your stuff from nowhere?
My country people, palava we bunker an illegal refinery the cost for the community too plenty. Our picking them we get better future don't they payment on top. We dey carry our own hand, spoil we land and water. I beg you, no follow the do or sponsor this kind of business. Now Pipeline Infrastructure Nigeria Limited and NNPCL say make we tell you now.
Discover Lipton's flavorful and balanced taste. We pick fine quality tea leaves from selected tea gardens around the world. To give you Lipton Yellow Label's flavorful and balanced taste in every sip.
Southwood. Fine furnishings for your home and office. Southwood is a Nigerian company dedicated to improving the quality of workplaces and homes. Our space planning and craftsmanship allows you to create a highly customized and comfortable office environment for hardworking and busy executives. Southwood solutions are perfect for today's flexible work cultures. Teamwork, transparency, collaboration. A well-designed and comfortable work environment is proven to increase productivity and morale. Our elegant home furnishings provide the ultimate in comfort and quality. Southwood, furnishings that shape your world. Visit us today at southwoodnigeria.com. Email us at furniture@southwoodnigeria.com or call 0700-FURNITURE.
The National Broadcasting Commission, NBC, welcomes broadcasters, content creators, tech experts, exhibitors, and investors from Nigeria and all over to the 13th edition of Africast. Africast is the destination event where local and global industry players experience the latest innovative technologies, services, products, and markets. Participants will experience 3 days of world-class exposition showcasing the very best in creativity, innovation, and technological advancement in the broadcast industry. Theme: broadcast content, synergy, finance, and market. Date: Tuesday, 24th to Thursday, 26th October 2023. Venue: Marriott Hotel, Ikeja, Lagos. Time: 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily. Chief host: Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation, Alhaji Mohammed Idris. Host: Balarabe Shehu Ilela, Director General. Announcer: Management. NBC, your right to quality broadcasting.
We are passionate about two things in Nigeria. The first is football. The second is our rice. And nobody celebrates like a Nigerian. So, for every goal scored, every mark made, you can be sure to always come back home to rice. Celebrate with Nigerian Premium Big Bull Rice, homegrown just like you. Big Bull Rice, tasty rice, nourished you.
Thank you for staying with us. Well, Mr. Bwala, let me come to you very quickly before I go to Mr. Bani. You know, Mark asked a question the other time if it is avoidable, if the issue of these controversies that have to come up every time an EFCC chairman is appointed, if it is avoidable. Do you think it is avoidable? Is it something to do with the law, something to do with the interpretation? Because there is no one who has been appointed chairman of the EFCC that has not ended up in some kind of issues being raised, such as we're raising now.
Thank you, Mr. Ayo. There has never been, in my view, a controversy. When Ribadu was appointed, there was no controversy when EFCC was established. When Farida was appointed, she was overqualified because she was above the rank of Commissioner of Police. That was the conversation then. When Lamurde came, same. It was when Magu came that the first controversy started, when they said whether he was up to the rank of Commissioner of Police. And at that time, Mr. George, he was at the rank of Assistant Commissioner of Police. Later, the government that put him there now hurriedly promoted him. When Bawa came, Bawa, who is from the private detective, which is a correct departure from the police, came. Because it was a new thing, people were contesting it. And the question at the time was that his position in EFCC, is it equivalent to the Assistant Commissioner of Police? And it was found out that at that time he has put in 16 years, and that 16 years was about the level of the Assistant Commissioner of Police. They lay it to rest. Now, you ask whether it can be avoided. In my view, there is no even problem. Because let me tell you, in our own discipline of law, there is no ambiguity in Section 2. Because if you look at it, flowing, it says, Section 2, sub 1A, the chairman who shall, the word shall, has been held by plethora of decisions of court. It gives no room for any personal opinion. It has to be complied with. Then in the compliance, it says 1 dot. The person will be chairman or accounting officer. 2, he must come from a government, not private sector. Government, security, or law enforcement. 3, then down under it, his position will not be below the rank of Assistant Commissioner of Police or his equivalent, because he can be from the security or from the law enforcement. And 2, he must not possess experience less than 15 cognate. Cognate experience means related to that agency that he's working. If he's from a DSS, he must have 15 years cognate experience relating to his function in DSS. If it's from DIA, if it is from EFCC, and all is like that. People deliberately decided to import their own interpretation. That's why Weke versus Federal Republic of Nigeria classify any extraneous interpretation as illegal legislation or amendment through the back door. And that is what it is. But the deeper conversation we've taken in the case of Olukayode is that he has not even lived up to 15 years in EFCC, assuming you want to take them on the fact that he had a stint in EFCC. That's one. And then if you take him on the stint that he's a private lawyer, the law here does not provide for any lawyer, irrespective of his experience as a legal practitioner, to be included here, because the Act says it must come from government, security, or law enforcement.
Well, Mr. Bwala, you also heard, you probably haven't been able to respond to what Mr. Ubani said the other time, that the second and the third provisions are separate. One, he must come from a government, security, or law enforcement. He has been in law enforcement with the EFCC. And the next one is that he must have 15 years cognate experience. And Mr. Ubani said that 15 years cognate experience is not an appendage to the previous, which is he must serve 15 years cognate experience in a law enforcement agency. What's your response to that one, quickly?
So, for example, in our discipline of law, all to the Supreme Court plethora of authorities, if you look at the Act, whenever these terms are going to be used disjunctively, which is the argument that my learned senior brother here is given, that they are separate, the word, the instrument there would have been all. Or, even or, if you want to add to a constitution or a statute, it has to go through legislative process. That is how important words are. And there is no conjunctive word there. I mean, disjunctive word there, or. If it says he will be a serving or retired member, blah, 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 or possess 15 years, then you will say they should be treated disjunctively. No, they are conjunctive. That is why you see number 1, number 2, number 3. It's a criteria that must be followed. Now, he said he has been in EFCC. It is not enough. You have to show he has been in EFCC for 15 years. Then show that he has gathered the experience in EFCC for 15 years. And I am even pushing the envelope further to say that appointment is the same as is not the same as recruitment, because his job in EFCC is not pensionable. If you look at the operative word there, he says serving or retired. Did he retire? Can he retire? He was sacked because he was appointed. So this is one. He was never a member. He was an appointed chief of staff, which is principal secretary. He has never investigated any case in EFCC, either in his capacity as company secretary, secretary of the commission, or as chief of staff. That's one. 2, he has never presided over operation, intelligence, or investigation. So he does not possess that experience that is called cognate, relevant to law enforcement. Okay. So they are now importing an argument to suggest that he went for course they call fraud expert, fraud management. Then we are now asking them, if he went for course, does it a cognate certificate or cognate experience?
Okay.
Because the experience that is here connotes dealing with live cases. You investigate a subject, you go for an operation. These guys are operatives, trained, armed, given the powers of a superior police officer, then the person can be a chairman.
Okay, let me come to you, Mr. Ubani. One of the arguments that some people have also put in public is that perhaps the issues being raised about the appointment of the EFCC chairman, subject to confirmation by the Senate, is that the man is said to be incorruptible, that there have been several attempts over time to corrupt him, to induce him one way or the other, but he's not been, they have not been able to do that. In fact, some people he has had arrested as a result of that one. Could this be corruption fighting back even before the fight starts?
Yeah, as the question you put before is the issue of controversy that usually trail any appointment of EFCC chairperson. And I think that the main reason is actually the subject matter, the issue of corruption. Corruption, you and I know, has really kept this country down. We are retarded in growth as a nation, not that we lack resources, but the fact that we have not been able to really deploy the resources that God has endowed this country with towards developing the country due to corruption. So anything that has to do with corruption fight, has an appointment of the chair has always, elicited a lot of controversy. And so this is not an exception. And it will settle down. Now, the Olukayode as a person, let me clear the point that he was indicted by Justice Salami's report. I don't think I've seen that report. I don't think he was even tried. It was only Magu that faced the trial, during the time there was an issue, in Magu's leadership. Olukayode was never invited or reported in the paper that he was invited for any questioning by the panel. So we need to clear all that. And I don't think there was any indictment, report we have seen, that is circulating that shows that he has been indicted or he was indicted by any panel whatsoever. So that has to be. So issue of him being incorruptible, I don't know about that. But that can be an added advantage. I said it elsewhere, that the issue of fight against corruption is something that all of us must be very interested in. The nation is not making progress because of issue of corruption. And the people who have put over time to man that agency has not been able to satisfy the country in terms of performance. And they all come from one particular profession. Over time, we have used them. And we have seen that there are shortcomings. So must we continue in that route? And I think that this time around, the government said, wait a minute, let's look at that act once again. Is there a way we can get somebody outside the Nigerian police to man the agency so that we can see a result? And I'm sure that my brother will be interested in having, this corruption fight, being given a real chase and get the country back and recover Nigeria so that we can have a country all of us shall be proud of. Okay. So if he's incorruptible and that is a report to that effect, that again is an added advantage, and that may even lead to his earlier clearance by the Senate, because these things are what we are looking for. We are looking for a man that is incorruptible. We are looking for a man that knows the issue of elements of crime and then tell the crack team to go towards element of crime. Why EFCC sometimes lose their case is because they don't even understand what they're investigating. If you don't know the elements of crime, you cannot be able to generate any evidence that can indict and even get a court.
All right, Mr. Bani, there's just one more issue.
In the court of law.
Yes,
so this man is knowledgeable.
This
man is knowledgeable, and we shall allow him to try EFCC and see what he can make out of it.
Just
that's
one
my
more
own
issue
opinion.
from me.
You want to ask a further question?
Just one issue. We are running out of time, Mr. Bwala and Mr. Bani. One of the issues that Mr. Falana raised yesterday is that of federal character. That for two agencies, for these two agencies, the EFCC and ICPC, both of them shouldn't come from the same region of the country. One should come from the north, the other should come from the south. What's your response to that?
I think we should be able to tell our leaders to ensure that they balance issue of appointment in the public service. It's very important because the unity of this country is an issue. And many persons feel they are really excluded from governance, because they come from certain area. I want a situation where our leaders will understand that our unity has always been an issue, and we must try to carry everyone along. I agree with him in total that in making such an appointment that is very sensitive as issue of two agencies and all that, then we must reflect our heterogeneity. We must make sure that we balance this equation to make sure that everyone is happy and carried along. We have intelligent men and women in every tribe in this country. We must not in any way at any point in time make sure that only one tribe, which has always been the case of EFCC, is only one tribe over time and one particular. But now somebody is now trying to bring it into South. But in bringing it to South, we must also make sure that other tribes and other regions are carried along in appointment, reflecting the federal character, which is very important and key.
Okay.
Let me say
yes,
this.
Mr. Bwala, please go ahead.
Let me say this.
Yes.
Good. With respect to this quota system, whatever quota system, to me is a diversionary tactics. Because even in EFCC right now, the president's disposition is to appoint a chairman from the Southwest. I don't have any argument or any objection to it. I am saying that in EFCC right now, from the Southwest, whether Christian or Muslim, they have overqualified people there. They are called Cos 1. In the next few months, they will put in 20 years. Choose from there. I'm not saying that because he has to take somebody from the north. And those who want to divert the tactics, I've seen recently, they say breaking news for the first time, a Southerner and a Christian, so that people will take away their mind from the issue of qualification and bring in sentiment. Point number one. Number two, with respect to cognitive experience, medical doctors, when they're advertising for a job, they will advertise if you want to apply. Then they will say 15 years cognitive experience. Can an accountant apply for that job and become a doctor? And then lastly, sir, with respect, the EFCC currently don't have police there. They have been so trained and they've come full cycle. They have operatives, they do operation, they bear arms, and they were trained for that purpose. If you know how much federal government invested in taking them, some of them went to FBI Academy. Why don't you take from that pool? Now, finally, sir, I beg 30 seconds. He's coming from the law firm he worked with. It's a defense-oriented. All security and law enforcement agencies are prosecutory in nature. When you bring in somebody from the defense platform to head that commission, you're bringing what we call conflict of interest and potential corruption in the system. Because the client he is defending, or the client of his friends and cronies and partners that they defended or they are defending, they are likely going to compromise the system. That is the reason why we hold the view. From the provisions of the Act, no ambiguity. From the issue of morality, and I'm of the view President has every right to appoint somebody from the Southwest. It is his prerogative. But there are people from the Southwest in EFCC that have been trained and are better qualified for that job, rather than bringing needless drama.
Okay, so just to face the qualification thing as well, because it would seem that what you're doing is giving it a very narrow and very strict reading of the Section 2 of the EFCC Act. Now, we know that the EFCC is the Economic and Financial Crimes Act. Now, some people will say that the amount of work that the EFCC has to do in terms of economic sabotage, fraud, etc., demands many kinds of expertise. When Mr. Falana was making his case yesterday, he also argued that there is no lawyer who has had who has worked with the EFCC as long as someone like Mr. Rotimi Jacobs, SAN, and that if such a person were to be appointed, for instance, will he be deemed not worthy or not qualified or under this particular act, given the amount of experience that he has? Yeah. So if you were to give it a very narrow region, wouldn't we be depriving ourselves of talent that could actually serve the work of the EFCC?
You're right. That is the intention of the act, to make it narrow and to make it reclusive. It is the intention of the act. In the case of ICPC, you see they made it broad. It is intended because it's a specialized agency. Remember, police and DSS, they have similar. So that is why it is made narrow deliberately. That is point number one with respect to that. And then secondly, Rotimi Jacob SAN is the #1 prosecutor all of his life. If you call Rotimi now, his prosecution, they know that you will say fit the profile to become chairman. But because the act does not provide for somebody who does not belong, he was a legal practitioner for them. He was not a staff of the federal government. He cannot be recruited as the chairman of that agency. So the solution is they can go and amend in the future and then bring in a private lawyer. But if it is the act as it is presently constituted, it is deliberately meant to be restricted to people who come from either law enforcement or from intelligence. And these two, what I'm saying is that Olu Kayode never had. The brief stint as secretary and chief of staff never afforded him the opportunity to have experience. Experience is the key word. And I asked my senior brother here, doctors used to advertise for medical doctors to be recruited into hospitals. They will say 15 years cognitive experience. Can an accountant apply? Because in a short while, you see, even a mechanic to the cast of EFCC, if he has been doing mechanic for 15 years, he would have possessed cognitive experience based on their interpretation to be made chairman.
So the point is, let me just say my last word. The point is that this dust will settle. Presently, there are two institutions that these matters are pending now before the Senate. The Senate have many lawyers. The president himself is an eminent lawyer. The leader is also an eminent lawyer. They will do the right thing. Then the matter is also before the court. So I believe that the court will give a proper interpretation to this matter and then let this matter settle. For God's sake.
Go to court. That's what they used to say. They will tell you go to court. APC, go to court.
Let's allow Ola to be the next chairman of EFCC.
Well, we can only go to break here. I want to thank both of you for coming on. Monday Obani and Daniel Bola, both lawyers. We're back in just a moment, everyone. Stay on with us.
President Bola Tinubu arriving for what is the second Federal Executive Council meeting of this administration. The first part of the day's meeting is the swearing-in ceremony for 3 newly appointed ministers. One after the other, their citations are read and they take their oath of office. The ministers were assigned their portfolios, with Jamila Bio Ibrahim as the Minister of Youths, Ayodele Olawande, Minister of State Youths, and Balare Lawal as Minister of Environment. This brings the number of ministers in the federal cabinet to 48. The meeting then went into a closed-door session. Afterwards, 7 ministers briefed journalists on the resolutions reached. The Council approved the 2024 to 2026 medium-term expenditure framework and the fiscal strategy paper.
The assumptions include oil price benchmark, which I said for 2024, we are assuming 73.96, oil production of 1.78 million barrels a day, exchange rate of 700, then the inflation of 21% and GDP growth rate of 3.76%. The aggregate expenditure is estimated at 26.01 trillion naira for the 2024 budget.
The minister also confirmed that a supplementary budget is being worked on, while the administration is hoping to sign the 2024 budget before the last day of 2023.
There will be a supplementary budget because, of course, there are continuing obligations and there are responses to security which can be immediate. So Mr. President is mindful of those and is assessing them. But Mr. President is also committed to the budget process and its integrity. So he wants to ensure that monies that are appropriated will be can be spent in the period for which they are appropriated.
The Minister of Finance spoke on the $1.5 billion loan secured from the World Bank.
Things are tough. Mr. President is aware, and that is why he has the intervention package, 500 billion naira, as well as other measures, including a wage award and later on a new wage structure for the country. So I think that answers all the questions about the 1.5 billion, why and how soon, and use of proceeds. It goes straight into the balance of payments, goes straight into the reserves to support the effort to improve the country's fiscal situation, to improve government finances.
It has been disclosed that henceforth, Federal Executive Council meetings will take place on Monday each week. It was, however, made clear that that did not necessarily mean that the meetings will hold every week, as that will be determined by the amount of work that needed to be done in the week under consideration. From the Presidential Villa, Landry Lasisi for Channels Television News.
Welcome back. Yes, indeed, Lalu Akode joins us next, a former presidential spokesman and a journalist. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chivalry.
Well, after several waits, FEC has held. And so many were wondering, okay, well, what's actually going on? But also interesting is the fact that now it's going to be on Mondays.
Yes.
No longer midweek.
Wednesdays, yeah.
How significant is this? I mean, why was it always on Wednesdays and now that it's going to be on Mondays? Was it stipulated that, look, it has to be on Wednesday? What were the reasons, though?
Yeah. Okay, so like I've said before, the Federal Executive Council is the president's court. And, you know, if you look at what the Constitution says, it's essentially an advisory body. And then the Constitution says that it should be a regular meeting. It doesn't say that it has to be weekly. It didn't dictate the frequency, you know, but it does say that it has to be a regular meeting, and it is an advisory board to the president. Look, the president has enough powers in the Constitution to take actions as the executive head of government for executive matters. So he doesn't really have to listen if he doesn't choose to. But of course, the Constitution gives you an opportunity to say, look, you know, you have ministers, bring them around regularly. So really, it's up to the president to determine how frequent. And that's my point. You know, although we've had a tradition where it is done weekly, and I guess that started during the military, as far as I can recollect, and of course, all through 1999. You know, but there is no specific stipulation that says that it has to be weekly or it has to be Monday or Wednesday. But I guess this president has chosen to do it on Mondays, and clearly he may not be interested in doing a weekly meeting. And I think that is entirely up to him. Like I said, the FEC is his court. You know, it's different from NEC, for instance, the National Economic Council. If you sit in both meetings, you will know that in the NEC, you see quite a bit of crossfire because you have governors who are who have executive powers in their own state coming together to meet representatives of the federal government, the vice president, the central bank governor, the finance minister, and they are always very free to say whatever they choose to say, really, because they're also executives in their own right. But in effect, you have people who work for the president. So oftentimes, FEC meetings are normally very dull. You know, everybody is agreeing. Very few people have the courage to even disagree with their colleagues, not talk of the president.
So it's not like what, a rubber stamp body?
Well, you know, to the extent that it is advisory, you know, from my experience, I've not seen a lot of spark in FEC compared to NEC, especially, you know, when you have a president that is almost larger than life, you know, and everybody is just happy to say, well done, sir. Now, I have seen ministers who have shown some courage, you know, and some seriousness, but by and large, FEC is just a place where everybody comes to say, well done, sir. So that's right.
What is, like Ranka did it right, so what is this thing we hear that they say, well, since it's Wednesday, it gives them time to go prepare their memos on Mondays and Tuesdays and come with it on Wednesday. But on Monday might be a challenge. Does it suffice?
No, I mean, one of the things that I find interesting is the extent of latitude that people get in public service, you know, which you will never even talk about in the private sector. Look, it doesn't matter, you know, even if all you have is 24 hours to prepare a memo, you know, you just go right and do it. You know, this very idea of, oh, you need 2 days, you need 4 days. Look, the work of public service is serious sacrifice, and only people who are willing to commit seriously should be there. So whether it's Monday or Friday, or if you get whatever notice, if you are there, you are supposed to serve. I think it was Mark Wade that was making the point yesterday that when you are in government, you serve. It's service. It's not...
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be.
Doesn't mean
It's
that's
not a place where you sit down and say, hey, I need all the time. Look, we have very serious problems. We have dire challenges in this country. And that's why we keep on saying that, look, it's important, you know, to keep government at their toes.
So tell us about this. Pardon me, Mark. What is it that you can tell us? Because we especially when we saw the, don't know how to describe it now, the scenario in the Ministry of Works and those civil servants who appear to be above the law, saying, well, no, you can't lock us out. And many didn't understand the dynamics because they in the private sector thought, if you're working in a firm, there are rules, you stick to it. And if, by the way, they represented the president, the ministers in those ministries. And so if they are seen to have flouted the rules of service in the civil service, then they should draw the line. So the attitude of members of the civil service, we have some people too who have been here saying that they don't see a lot of that kind of agility and seriousness that the work requires in the public sector. What do you know about how they function? Is it, what, close to what people have described it?
Well, you know, I think the raw fact is that we do have a very important need to reform the civil service, you know, and there are several factors, you know, that explains that. Even the kind of pay that is given to civil servants is, as far as I'm concerned, is a joke. You know, you make somebody a director, you know, he looks and decides on files of millions and tens of millions, at times billions, and then the guy is handing 400,000 naira. You know, so there are a lot of reforms. Now, in terms of discipline also, in terms of the kind of seriousness that you need to bring to the job, there is a need for a lot of reforms. You know, I have interacted with civil servants who are up to par, clearly, but there are quite, you know, a number also that you see this attitude of slothfulness. So it's a question of what kind of structure do you put in place, you know, and then what kind of reward system, what kind of disciplinary system that you put in place. And we've done it before in this country, you know, but that is one area that I believe we really need to sit down as a nation, as a people, to say what kind of civil service do we want. I mean, look at the United Kingdom, for instance. Their best students coming out of Oxford, coming out of Cambridge, are the ones that end up in the civil service, you know, and they are well paid. So the quality of what comes out is quite connected to the fact of their training and their exposure and the reward system. We need to bring back that kind of situation. And we've had it before in this country. So there's a lot of work. There is a lot of work to be done in the area of people who could be slothful, you know, but there is also a lot of work to be done in the area of bringing in people, of attracting the best, you know, and rewarding them appropriately.
Well, I mean, just to also add that, I'm sure you must have been a bit shocked as to what exactly happened with the Ministry of Works. You know, I was away then. You know, just listening to what had happened, I had my mouth agape, like, what, really? Anyways, we've been told that there was more to it than met the eye. But yesterday was another situation whereby an appointee of the president, I think it was to NIPOST, was denied entry by members of staff who worked there, blocking the gates and saying that, no, we want the person who had been there before to be reappointed again. I mean, there are questions as to, okay, do you think that there should be more consultations held before the president makes an appointment? Or do you think that, you know, members of staff could really have a point, especially if they see that maybe there's been progress made under a headship somewhere, and maybe they think that that progress might be derailed?
Yeah, so there are a few things that is happening, and I think we have to be very clear to try and call it what it is. The powers of a president to appoint to executive offices under the Constitution should never be limited or hindered by anybody. You know, whoever is the president has been elected, so he has taken an oath to the office, so he has the authority. So the president does not have to go and consult with the workers of a place and say, this is the kind of person that I want to bring. So it's something that is out of the ordinary for people to say that the person that the president has chosen can't enter. That is quite a bit of a stretch. But I think the matter was sorted out. Now, but I also think that it's important for the authorities to have, I don't know, maybe there's need for some kind of training or some kind of brushing people up. Look, a minister said yesterday, for instance, that she was going to sue the United Nations. You know, first and foremost, you know, the United Nations has immunity against local jurisdiction. You cannot sue the United Nations. And if you do have a grudge so much as you expressed, you know, what about the Foreign Affairs Minister? Why don't you go to the Foreign Affairs Minister or the Budget and Planning Minister, you know, those ministries that deal with international agencies? So you see that there's a bit of, and of course, you had a situation of the former NIPOST Postmaster General coming back after a presidential statement that said that, you know, there's a new guy, and then you come back and you know, made NIPOST to say that you've been reinstated. You know, it's a bit of chaos that the president has to fix.
We'll continue from that particular point because we need to go to break now, so don't go away.
Southwood. Fine furnishings for your home and office. Southwood is a Nigerian company dedicated to improving the quality of workplaces and homes. Our space planning and craftsmanship allows you to create a highly customized and comfortable office environment for hardworking and busy executives. Southwood solutions are perfect for today's flexible work cultures. Teamwork, transparency, collaboration. A well-designed and comfortable work environment is proven to increase productivity and morale. Our elegant home furnishings provide the ultimate in comfort and quality. Southwood, furnishings that shape your world. Visit us today at southwoodnigeria.com. Email us at furniture@southwoodnigeria.com or call 0700-FURNITURE.
We are passionate about two things in Nigeria. The first is football. The second is our rice. And nobody celebrates like a Nigerian. So, for every goal scored, every mark made, you can be sure to always come back home to rice. Celebrate with Nigerian Premium Big Bowl Rice, homegrown just like you. Big Bowl Rice, tasty rice, nourished you.
Discover Lipton's flavorful and balanced taste. We pick fine quality tea leaves from selected tea gardens around the world to give you Lipton Yellow Label's flavorful and balanced taste in every sip.
We are passionate about two things in Nigeria. The first is football. The second is our rice. And nobody celebrates like a Nigerian. So, for every goal scored, every mark made, you can be sure to always come back home to rice. Celebrate with Nigerian Premium Big Bull Rice, homegrown just like you. Big Bull Rice, tasty rice, nourished you.
Okay, welcome back. So let's pick up on that particular point. So the scenario, as we understand it, is that NIPOS tweeted that the man had been reappointed.
Yeah.
And then there were images of them dancing, celebrating that he's been reappointed. And this was after the presidential statement of a new appointment to NIPOS.
Yeah.
So in that kind of scenario, you then wonder, of course, several people try to get across to the presidential spokesperson, Nigeria, to find out what's going on here, because there's only one confirmation. And so when NIPOS now tweets something contrary to the statement that had been issued by the president, then you see the former man dancing and celebrating. What does that tell you?
Yeah, and one has to say this with a bit of caution, but there's quite a bit of chaos, that is going on. And I think the president has to come in and weigh in on this in a very firm way. I mean, all of this kind of stuff just got to stop. And you don't know on what authority the man went back, actually on the weekend, to get the NIPOS handle to say that he's been reinstated, and then he goes in and you see a motley crowd, welcoming him after a presidential statement has gone out. And then I think, thankfully, yesterday, I read reports that the presidency has waded in, and then they announced, the person who was announced by the presidential statement has actually resumed. But there are quite a few other, chaotic stuff that we have spoken about. So I think the president really needs to give authority, perhaps to the chief of staff or the secretary to the federal government. Somebody needs to be able to rein in very strongly against all this chaos.
Because in that kind of scenario, there are several things, several questions really, because how does that agency, it just appears as though, look, if that position, if the man loved it so much, how come we didn't see the, of course, very groundbreaking, fantastic changes in NIPOS if you wanted to continue staying? And because the new person who's coming there has got to really go in there and do some house cleaning. Because those chaps who got one day and then tweeted, then the man himself, who knows, maybe he was the one who even told them, hey, go ahead and let's orchestrate this. Does that then speak to how people take communication that comes through from government? Because that's one, for instance, because there are a few others which we hope to highlight here. In that kind of case, what kind of steps should be taken to ensure that those kind of things don't happen again?
I think, it boils down to consequences. So you can't have a situation where the president has instructed a statement to be made regarding appointments. Those statements that come out of Villa, it's about the most authoritative. It doesn't get more authoritative than that. So you can't have a situation where somebody is trying to undermine that using an agency of government, which is under the presidency. But there has to be consequence. So it's important, for whoever is going to do that. Like I said, it's probably the Secretary of Government of the Federation or the Chief of Staff. Some of the people on the team of the president have to get an handle on this thing and say that, how did that happen? And then once you find that, there must be consequence. And that's how to deal with it.
Because could they be taking a cue from what they saw with Ministry of Works and thought, okay, well, maybe we could try something similar? You're never going to tell.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of drama. I don't know whether you also saw the case of the CAC, the Registrar General, who was removed, and that kind of, obituary kind of a post that went viral. And people even also going somewhere to dance that the man is gone. Now, that one is neither here nor there. but you see quite a bit of this excitement and some kind of the civil servants really, almost overreaching, but
they appear to be what, untouchable? Or no one can. It appears as though I can do anything and get away with it.
Well, it's up to the people that have the authority to ensure that things are done orderly. Now there are also like in the case of Governor Umahi, who actually even apologized. Ultimately there are those who said that okay, yes, of course, you could set the rules. I mean, the rules are set as to the time of arrival. But I think their own argument was also that they were not informed. And you say, hey, but it's already everybody knows the time that you're supposed to arrive, So I just think that this might also be part of the kind of civil service reforms that we have to do. But it has to be, we have to consider all the sides. So yes, while we are seeing all these laxities, in terms of discipline and stuff like that, we also have to take care of the area of their welfare and the kind of reward system in the service.
Do you think that there should be consequences, though? I mean, for some of these confusions which were obviously avoidable. For instance, in the issue of appointment, if you were not reappointed, for instance, and you got an agency of government to tweet that you were reappointed and you creating some sort of drama around it, do you think that there needs to be consequences for that sort of behavior?
I believe so. And it's very important for the president. This is something that the president should be concerned about. The president shouldn't allow a situation where people will say, after your spokesperson have gone out, I mean, look, the spokesperson is the spokesperson. That's why whoever is the spokesperson's got a job, is to say, this is what the president said to the public. So you shouldn't allow a situation where somebody else goes to say that I've made a call to somebody, I've spoken to somebody who said, exactly, who said that has been changed. If there's going to be a change,
it will come from the spokesperson. It must
come back. And we've had instances even under this government. Remember just one day before the inauguration of the Executive Council, we had some tweaking of the ministries. I mean, so the spokesperson came back and said that this is what was going to happen. So in this particular instance, the spokesperson didn't say anything. The presidency was quiet, and then you had a government agency, a NIPOST Twitter handle, or X handle now, the name has changed, to say it has been said that there must be consequences. I agree entirely. That is the only way to stop all this kind of...
I think they'll need to look into the activities of that, the outgone Postmaster General. Let's find out, why does he want that position so much? Why is he so... What's that? Juicy, as they say, because getting people to tweet.
NIPOST now one of those juicy ones.
He wanted that thing so bad, and we didn't see that much. Well, I guess they will look into all of those to ensure that, look, that there's got to be law and order.
He just wanted to continue to go to work.
By all means, he just really wanted to. Well, maybe he should go back to the private sector where he came from and see. Well, I don't know if he came from the private sector. I stand corrected. But Ayo's got some questions on this matter. We still have a lot of grounds to cover as well. There's palliatives too, how state governors are handling all of those. What's going on with that? The social register. So many questions. But Ayo, go ahead.
Thank you, Chamberlain. I think, my question to Mr. Konde is pretty much going to lay a background for those other issues because they border on civil service, they border on governance. So, Mr. Konde, one of the things that we've seen in all the examples that have been given, the Umahi experience, the Odeyemi experience, and the CSC experience that you also mentioned, borders all comes down to the civil service. There is such an individual or an office as the head of service. There are such offices as the Office of the Permanent Secretary in each of these agencies. There is the Office of the Secretary of, whatever ministry, department, or agency. Whenever the top guy in an agency of government is removed, the person is asked to hand over to the next most senior person, meaning hand over to the civil service before a substantive person is installed or rather announced back into that office to head that institution. Speak to the issue of the civil service. You've talked about consequences, and I'm wondering whether or not the civil service system doesn't have a consequence system within itself for such things to not happen in the first place. Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to one thing. the head of an organization is appointed by whoever is prescribed by law or by the Constitution to appoint such a person. So where we find ourselves now, when employees of the president are saying no to the president, what should the civil service have done, or what is missing in the civil service that opened that gap in the first place?
Very important point that you've made, Ayo, especially regarding the head of the Federal Civil Service. And you're right. You know, I think the initiation of the consequence, whatever our consequences that will follow, ought to start from the head of the civil service. And, you know, it's becoming something close to a trend. You know, now, I had said that we have to do an overall civil service reforms, you know, so I've made that point. But, you know, to your point, yes, the consequences ought to be initiated from the office of the head of the Federal Civil Service, you know, and it's somebody that I know wouldn't tolerate the kind of behaviors that we have seen. So we should be expecting, you know, that right from that office, you know, we got to find out what is going on. And, you know, a stop has to be put to it. And the way to do it is to investigate what has happened in all these instances, especially, you know, the case with the Minister for Works, even though the Minister for Works, being a politician, has already apologized. But I think it's important to look at it, look at all the sides. And then this particular case of somebody who had been removed, you know, getting the agency to announce that he's been reinstated, you know, only for us to find out on the Monday that, no, actually, you know, the new appointee is in charge, you know, and some other dramatic instances that we've had, you know. Is it also right for civil servants to be rejoicing, you know, dancing outside of a place? Well, I guess people may say that it's a freedom of expression, you know, but to the issue of the reinstatement, you know, somebody coming out to announce their reinstatement, and then people trying to avoid being held accountable for coming late, you know, those things have to be looked at right from the desk of the head of the civil service. But it's important, you know, because we've got to balance it that, look, there's a lot that we need to fix in our civil service. The structure has to change. You know, we have to change the orientation. We have to find a way that we can attract the best. And when the best are in there, we have to find a way to keep them.
Well, speaking to that, it speaks to also the function of collaboration and ensuring that things are done properly. Well, Chamberlain mentioned the fact that we need to talk about palliatives. And it leads me to just one question on that before we go back to him. And that is the fact that it was the presidency, the federal government, that announced palliatives and also announced 5 billion naira to each of the states. Now, we've been getting reports in Ogun State. I think we even highlighted that, and it's on our website, channelstv.com, that something is happening that the community development associations are not happy about. But at the end of the day, it was the president that made the announcement, or the federal government that made the announcement, and it's the states that are supposed to implement these things, and they have been so mobilized. Do you think there should have been, I mean, speak to us as someone who has been within, especially, you know, working with the vice president at the time. Do you think there should have been some kind of monitoring system from the federal government when these allotments were made to the states? Because people are wondering whether or not these palliatives are even getting to the people in the first place.
Yeah, so there are at least 2 or 3 mechanisms for monitoring. So there is a monitoring unit when we were there in the villa, okay, that their job is to monitor and evaluate within the presidency, you know, whatever it is that has to be monitored. And then there is also in the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, there's also an embedded, you know, monitoring and evaluation unit, you know, department, actually in that ministry. And of course, in the states themselves where these things are being distributed, you know, I imagine that there will also be monitoring units. Now, but I think the bigger issue here is that when we talk about the palliatives, it's important to keep an eye on who these palliatives are meant for. So if you're distributing rice, I don't think you meant to give rice to people who live in estates. That's not the palliative that they need. Just like the video that went viral when the man was saying that, look, we have about 67 families in this estate and we just have a bag of rice. So something went wrong. If we are trying to implement these palliatives in a one-fits-all system, one window for everybody, it wouldn't work. I think the intention of the president is to ensure that people that are I think the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable, so those are the people that need the kind of thing like rice. I think the more important point is that, look, so where are the CNG buses? What is happening? Since June, May 29, when the president announced that the subsidy was gone, and now we've had June, July, August, September, 4 months, Mr. President. Where are the buses? Well, it's important to communicate with the people.
I think we'll come back to that message about the palliatives. There was a letter from the Ogun State, which I think they responded. Is it Ogun State government or somebody else in the state government?
Somebody in the state government claiming that this was the governor's response. I'm going to see if we can quickly locate that particular letter and maybe read it in the course of...
Yeah, we'll get to it much later. But the thing about that is this. Now that money has been announced, and we've consistently have tried to find out from the states what templates is being used for this distribution, what documents, what platform, because one would have thought that since NEC said they didn't like the previous register, that they would then go back and develop a proper one, according to them, proper in quotes, which can then be used to probably in the future develop something that we can call social security and then get so many people across board. But today, part of what you highlighted, we don't know how we can access that, if it does exist at all. What have the states done with this 2 billion naira that has been released? Because eventually they will get to release the other 3 billion.
Yeah.
Should the 2 billion be, in terms of how they utilize it, should it be a condition precedent if they're going to release the other 3 billion to them? So there are several questions. So could you talk to us about some of this? What have you found? What should we actually be looking out for to ensure, like Pato, you highlighted, it goes to the people who need it? And above all else, the money is actually utilized and not pocketed.
Yeah. So I think, to be fair to what the federal government has laid out, so there are a number of things that we have had to be done. So the 5 billion, to each of the states from which 2 billion has been given is one. It's just one, but of course, we all of us have billions and we focus on that. There are other things that has been promised. That's why I raised the issue of the compressed natural gas, the buses. That is such a big deal. When we talk about subsidy, you're talking about fuel subsidy. So the prices of fuel has gone up. The transportation cost has gone up. People have to buy, spend more to fill their cars. That's why those CNG buses are so critical. That's why it's a big deal. And yes, the government has, given us announcement, this is what we're going to do. And I think they said even thousands of those buses. Kudos to that. We need to be told what has happened. Government has to come out and give us a timeline, so that people can also plan. And there are some other things, that they have also planned. Of course, some of the wage award to labor and some of the other things that has been announced. But I think, to your point, what is important, as in all the cases, is that government, especially the federal government and then the state government, the issue of coordination, we cannot overemphasize it. The issue of coordination is important. Otherwise, you can have a situation where the president or the governor really wants to do things properly, but if there are no effective coordination mechanism that goes down to the grassroots, and that's where the problem is. Okay? That's why, for instance, we have, people sending rice to people who live in estates. It is because the coordination is not effective all the way down. So somebody just sits down and said, you know what, okay, let's give this to all the local governments, but hey, there are some local governments where they are not, they're not considered to be vulnerable, People living in Lekki, for instance, cannot be treated the same way with people that are living in Shomolu.
Doesn't mean they don't get palliatives.
No, well,
no such thing for them.
There we have other things, in the larger picture. I don't think it's everybody that will get a palliative because some people can take care of themselves, really, if you look at the income levels. And the point is that you cannot have a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, but even if those people don't get palliatives, they are also affected by the price. There should be something that cuts across board. So that even if it has to be companies, I know they spoke about taxes, something has got to happen. Yeah. Because if you say these people can take care of them, they're paying taxes, which are being used to develop other things. Yeah. There has to be something.
I agree entirely. And I think to your point, I think there was a time, I think it was when Mr. Dilalake was in charge of communication in the villa, he did come out and announce a raft of tax holidays and other measures, that have been in plan for everybody, even people in the business. So the important thing is that we need to come back to those things. I said, okay, we announced this 30 days ago. This is where we are on it. Look, one of the things that we have to emphasize is that public communication is such a big deal. But in our country, a lot of things are still done in an opaque way. And it's not helping the government to earn the trust. And this is the experience that I have even had in my 8 years that, look, we have to do more in terms of public communication. We are dealing with over 200 million people.
Just to talk about public communication, I think it's very important to say that on its official handle, the Ogun State government responded to that particular incident. Okay. And they're talking about palliatives and fifth columnists. According to them, the sack of rice was actually meant for a widow within the community, which the LCDA chairman was supposed to present. He was supposed to present that sack of rice to the widow in his community. But I think it also raises questions as to the engagement levels. I mean, if the chairman wasn't aware of how things were being distributed and all of a sudden somebody goes to him and says, this is a sack of rice, there'll be questions about the communication. Was he the one who identified that vulnerable member? How was she identified? And what was communicated to him when he was given that sack of rice? So these are some of the questions that will, but the Ogun State government on its own official Twitter handle has also responded to that particular video.
So what we'll do is next time out, we'll take a look at public communication across board, states and federal government, and we'll see what we can point out from the textbooks to reality. Bolalu, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Let's see how much of the messages we can take now. It has to be breakneck speed. This one coming from Kenneth about the new AFCC chairman. He says, though there are lots of arguments over the appointment of AFCC heads and the constitutional questions that follow, the most relevant argument is how successful has a fight against corruption been under the leadership of the, quote, constitutionally qualified heads of the agency. So I guess we can see the rest there. That's from Kenneth.
And you have a number of other, this mail too from Dixon Eckhart talking about the cost of governance. He says, I use this medium to congratulate the newly sworn-in ministers, but their portfolios kept surprising me and many others. The humongous expansion of the Federal Executive Council members to 48 ministers, while giving ministers of state to almost all the ministries to further increase the cost of governance, is, to say the least, unnecessary. The Ministry of Youth was a department under the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and if it's being carved out, why should it have two ministers in such a ministry? So on and on that mail goes. You can also see it right there, but we're almost out of time. We also see tweets from Mr. Festus Akinboyewa and Pastor Law Alpha Cross, Taiwo Olokbade. Your mail is also acknowledged.
Maybe we'll try and see how we can take that Taiwo and several other people. Prof, for all of you, we'll see what we can do tomorrow. But we do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. Chamberlain, also.
Well, thank you so much. Don't forget about that pot. Own a pot, own a patch of land, grow something you can eat. Thank you for watching. I'm Ayo
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Chamberlain, I'll be calling your manager.
Our